ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste, my dear friends. Continuing the discussion and talk on Updesa Saram. This will be the 6th video in the series. I start with stanza number 16. When the mind withdraws from external objects of sense and beholds, that is, engages in mystic introspection of its own effulgent form, that is true wisdom. Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse number 16, etc. Learning should not be mistaken for wisdom. Much learning is a weariness to the flesh and may, by its distraction, prevent peace of mind. Not so wisdom. There can never be a surfeit of wisdom. Learning is occupied with study of things external to oneself. If a man should study the whole world or even gain it, of what use it is, unless he studies and masters himself? Even to get real knowledge of the world, one must know himself. Self-knowing is the chief duty and interest of man is wisdom. This is common sense and the wisdom of philosophy. This verse has a further significance. Maharshi is not teaching here psychology and philosophy of religion, though what he teaches is connected with them. To learn such science or philosophy, one must pursue the well-known scientific methods of observation, experiment, framing of tentative hypotheses, and checking the result of their application with well-known facts with a view to correct or develop such hypotheses. Maharshi, on the other hand, is proceeding on different lines here. The ancient mystics of this land, the rishis, pursued their scientific research and applied their conclusions to reach the result they desired. The goal sought was bliss, the highest bliss, welling up from within and forming the bottom layer, or rather a sense of man, and the method adopted was mystic introspection, which was no doubt based on certain psychological and philosophical truths about self, God, and the universe. The highest bliss was declared to be one's reaching identity with the real substratum of the universe and of oneself, described as Satchit Anand, Satchidanand. The process of reaching involved the affirmation of some positions of psychology and philosophy which were reached according to the science of their days. The scientific accuracy of those positions may be disputed and perhaps disproved, yet still the mystic and blissful result which the ancient seers reached can be, is being, and will be reached exactly as it was in their days. Verse 17 et.sq. deal with some of the positions taken or used in that process of mystic introspection. While reading these, an ordinary reader will be well advised, if he is anxious to secure the bliss of mystic realization, not to be puzzled about their relation to the facts and doctrines of modern psychology and philosophy, and the question whether the latter corroborate or contradict the former or leave them untouched. Even if there should be any contradiction in the positions, that does not and cannot affect the indubitable experience of bliss resulting from the use of the old positions according to the time honored method. Even variations of that method, like that adopted by Tennyson, see page 14 Supra, produce the same result. It is of the utmost importance for learned readers to remember that we are not now proceeding here to deal with the psychology or philosophy of the self according to modern methods, but only dealing with a peculiar art involving a single element of applied psychology and philosophy applied for the discovery of bliss, one's real nature, that art based on the fundamental nature of man and his environment still holds good, and so far as we can see will hold good forever. There is no suggestion here that the old positions embodied in verse 17 have in fact been demolished or weakened by modern science or philosophy, nor is any competent scholar or expert dissuaded here from examining the old positions in the new light. The only point made here is that such examination is not necessary for reaping the benefit of Maharshi's teaching, Updesa, and if made by all and sundry, might unsettle the faith of some and prevent their deriving the full benefit of that teaching. Verse number 17. When the mind unceasingly ponders over its own nature, it transpires that there is no such thing as mind. This is the state course for all. Verse number 18. The mind is merely thoughts. Of all thoughts, the thought I is the root. Therefore, the mind is only the thought I. This root thought is basic thought, that is identification with the body. If we identify ourselves with the body, this thought is known as I thought, root thought, basic thought, false I, or ego. We have to remember. The thought I is also known as ego, self-consciousness, ahankar, the feeling of one's personality. Thoughts means mental phenomena. When any thought arises, seek its root by asking, to whom does this thought arise? Who thinks this? The answer is I, a person, that is ego. There is no thought without a thinker. So the thinking person I is the root of the thought. And who is the thinker? Ego. What is ego? Ego is the modification of mind. Identification with the body is the I thought, basic thought, root thought, ego, false I. So many names we call it by. Stanza number 19. Whence does this I arise? Seek this within. This I then vanishes. This is the pursuit of wisdom. The next question to ask yourself is, who is this I? What sort of entity is it? The caused or uncaused, finite or infinite? Whence does it arise? By introspection, try to see how and where this thought I begins. The result is that what formerly appeared as a distinct individual person, I, who entertained the thought, disappears and is seen no more. Here, a reader may suddenly rouse himself up and ask, what is this harakiri that is going on? Harakiri means suicide, committing suicide. Dr. Guillotine, after getting innumerable victims, had chopped off by his all-devouring guillotine, himself fell a victim to it. Are we suffering the same fate by following the seemingly heartless advice of the English poet? Die, if thou wouldst be with that which thou dost seek, follow where all is fled. Or that of the sage who ordered, Yen tejasi tej, Yen tejasi tatyaj, that is, give up or surrender that mind or ego with the aid of which you have surrendered everything else. In the words of Maharshi, the stick, ego, which helped in cremating various other bodies by pushing them into the funeral blaze, jnana vichara or quest of wisdom is itself in the and burnt up in the same blaze. Are we then ending in utter annihilation? Is that possible? We find the answer to these questions in the following stanzas, which reassure us of the truth proclaimed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, stanza 15, that the one fundamental real abides ever, while all the else, with a mere phenomenal existence, must change and pass away. That is, that he who wishes to escape from the turmoils of earthly strife or samsara or succession of births and deaths must retreat into his impregnable citadel by recognizing or realizing the truth of his being as the one real, the pure Atma or Brahma. Verse number 20. Where the I vanished, there appears an I by itself. This is the infinite Puranam. Notes. Is there then a blank after the loss of the feeling of one's individual personality? No. The one supersensible being that underlies this appearance, I, and all other unreal appearances, that is Brahma, Purnam, appears in place of the I and covers not one individual I only but all. Hence it is denoted by the expression I, denoting the merger or absorption of the individual and particular in the universal. Is this annihilation? No. The dewdrop slips into the shining sea. The tiny spark rejoins the eternal flame. Stanza 21. This is always the true import of the term I, for we do not cease to exist even in the deepest sleep where there is no waking I. The term I, as ordinarily used, denotes one with waking consciousness. However, even in deepest sleep there is continuity of consciousness, as on waking up a person remarks, I enjoyed sound sleep all these hours. That proves the necessity for stretching the eye wider, that is, beyond waking consciousness. Proceeding thus to see what I or personality is, one arrives at the Atam Brahma as its real basis or nature. Here, the argument of the poem is little noted as the Upanishads themselves are when they treat of the Susupti deep sleep state. Some Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, chapter 2, stanza 17, 4, 3, 19, 21, chapter 4, 19, 21, and 23 treat it as identical with the state of pure consciousness or perfect self-realization. But most authorities, for example, chapter Upanishads 8, stanza 2, Taittiriya Upanishad, chapter 2, stanza 8, chapter 3, stanza 10 and 5, Karikas, chapter 5, stanza 15 on, Mandukya Upanishad, chapter 7 and 279 affirm that the deep sleep state is after all one of the states of the individual soul in which he is still clothed with ignorance, though that state is the happiest of the three and makes the nearest approach to self-realization. In self-realization, it is all pure consciousness. No ignorance can linger there. In fact, it is a piece of unfortunate necessary to call it a state at all. For self-realization is the unique self, the Atma Brahma, the one real wherein no difference is possible between a person or object and his or its state, between attribute and substance, between knowing and being, knower, knowing and known. In deep sleep, the jiva is very much dimmed and burns like a bedroom light with wick low down, just twinkling and keeping up minimum activity. It is hardly noticeable, still it is there. Touch it and like a snake it will uncoil itself and spread out its flaming hood. It has power of enjoyment, a bit of memory and a preference of its own to respond to some stimuli more readily than to others. Assuredly, deep sleep is below even the lowest samadhi, wherein the soul is absorbed in some form leading to the real and of course far below the highest Advaitinja Samadhi, that is Sahaja Nirvikalpa, which is the same as perfect realization. Here the argument is that Brahma is lurking behind the I whenever people use that term or thought denoted by it. It lurks from behind, so to speak, when a waking individual talks of I am doing this or I thought that or I won this battle, and sometimes may demonstrate their error to the individuals or gods concerned. See Kenopanishad chapter 3 stanza 14 to 26. This applies not merely to their waking use of the term. The I occurs in their dreamy sleep, which is mostly a disorderly reproduction of waking and perhaps long forgotten experiences. Even there that I is but a mask for the Brahma. In deep sleep, I still continues, though in a very attenuated form, so attenuated as to account for its being commonly, though inaccurately, described as the state without the ego. And even that ego is a pretender and not the real. It pretends to be bliss, but its lack of illumination and its short life prove that it is an impostor and not the real. Brahman Atma, the Atman knows that and everything, but the deep sleep I knows next to nothing. So Maharshi sums all this up and says in his first line, the reality that lurks behind the I always, that is in all the three states, is this I, the pure and perfect consciousness, that is our Atma. A corollary has been drawn from the above stated fact. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is asserted that when an object, that is a wife or a son, attracts our love, the only reason for it is that attraction and lovability are the nature of the Atma Brahma. See section 4 and 5. Stanza number 22. The body, senses, mind, life, prana, and ignorance, avidya or susupti, are all insentient and not the real. I am the real, Sat. These seats I am not. In stanza 19, the question of the origin and therefore the nature of I is raised. Here the question is pursued further. What am I? There is a hazy feeling that any object perceived outside this my body is not I, and that I inheres in this body. Am I then the limbs, the organs? No, I exist without them after amputation or when I lose this food sheath, the whole body in sleep or death. Am I the life breath prana? No, I survive that also in cases of suspended breathing or in death. Am I the mind and intellect regulating it, manasa and vijnanam? No, the personality survives when madness or disease take away the mind and reason. Am I then the feeling of ease or bliss in deepest, that is dreamless sleep, where all functions of body and mind are at rest and where only the unillumined, that is ignorant components of the unconscious remain? No, not even that. As I feel that I am and that I am conscious, I cannot be ignorance or anything unillumined. What then am I? I am what remains after all these sheaths are removed. I am that which is being, Satta. I am that which is conscious, Chit. As happiness or Anandam is that which is beyond pleasure and pain, and these inhere in these rejected seats. I am past all pleasure and pain. I am happiness, Anandam. Stanza number 23. As there is no second being to know that which is conscious, we are that. Stanza number 24. creatures and creator do both exist. They are alike and one in being. Their differentia are the degree of their knowledge and other attributes. Stanza number 25. When the creature sees and knows himself without attributes, that is knowledge of the Creator, as the Creator appears as no other than the Self. Stanza number 26. To know the Self is to be the Self, as there are not two separate selves. This state is Tanmaya Nishtha. Tanmaya Nishtha literally means abiding as that. That is Brahma or real being. Stanza number 27. That knowledge is real, knowledge which transcends both knowledge and ignorance. There is no object to be known there. In the state of realization of Brahma, unity prevails. The idea that I know this or I am ignorant of that cannot enter there. There is no second entity to know in that realization. Stanza number 28. When one's true nature is known, then there is being without beginning and end. It is unbroken awareness bliss. There is no difference and hence no beginning nor end. What is realized may be described as existence, consciousness and happiness. That is, absence of pleasure and pain as set out in the note to stanza 22, Satya Chitta Anandam. Stanza number 29. Remaining in this state of supreme bliss, past all thoughts of bondage and release is abiding in the service of the Supreme. To those beginning with the path of bhakti, this culmination may appear as a self-surrender to the Supreme. Any worship or service thereafter rendered will be egoless, as the will or soul is absorbed in God or Brahma. Among practitioners, sadhakas, before reaching their goal or end, conflict of views arise sometimes. Some contend that bhakti, by purifying the mind, intensifying concentration and bringing about non-difference between Jiva and Isvara or God of one sort, serves as the means for jnana and is nothing more. Others contend that jnana, by revealing God's infinite beauty, power and other lovable attributes, is the means for strengthening bhakti and is nothing more. Maharshi reconciles the combatants by pointing to the end. Here at the end all apparently divergent paths coalesce. The highest reach of bhakti is the same as the highest realization of jnana, as in both cases the finite desire bound ego has been surrendered or destroyed, and the only survivor is the imperishable Supreme. Stanza number 30. The realization of that which subsists when all trace of I is gone is good austerity, tapas. So sings Ramana, the self of all. The jnani may not appear to a superficial observer as a tapasvi, a man of austerities, but in fact he is the greatest of tapasvis. As his tapas, as spontaneous awareness of the self is constant, bereft of the least trace of individual effort. The process of ridding oneself of the ego also is very severe tapas, involving the sacrifice of everything, including the sacrificing self, an excellent form of tapas. Tasya jnanmayam tapaha, tapsa brahm vijisa sakha tapo brahmaha. That is, austerity in the form of jnana or self-avoidance. Second, realize Brahma by austerity. Austerity is Brahma. This is from Taittiriya Upanishad chapter 2, stanza number 2. So here I end this video. Thank you for watching this video with patience. Namaste my dear friends. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe my channel. Thank you my dear friends. Namaste.